a vague concept, not so clear concept can be made more specific and more accurate. Jadi kita akan berikan definisi-definisi yang tertentu. We will give definitions, whatever concepts being used, and we will apply or we use that definition throughout our study. Hubungan di antara konsep abstrak dinyatakan dalam bentuk hipotesis conceptual. The relationship between the abstract concepts will be stated in conceptual hypothesis. And talking about conceptual hypothesis, it is a statement between or a statement of relationship between two or more conceptual variables. For example, there is a positive relationship between this variable and the other variable. Kalau kita ambil contohnya, for example, di antara tahap religiosity, we assume, okay, what is religiosity? Religiosity is based on apa dia? That will be the concept or the theoretical. And conceptual, for example, macam mana kita ukur religiosity? Religiosity will be or should be, in our discussion here, should be measured or should be gauged using, for example, ada satu artikel ataupun satu kajian yang anda sendiri pernah terlibat dengan kawan-kawan yang ada. Kami bila this was about nearly 20 years back. And when we want to measure religiosity, we found that there are a number or various approaches in achieving that. Either in the Western writings or the Islamic literature. Akhir sekali, finally we concluded that why not we try another approach. Our approach was we use hadith Jibril. Okay? Islam itu ada Islam, ada iman, ada ihsan. The syariah part, the akidah part, and the akhlaq aspects of an individual will constitute the religiosity level of that individual. Jadi macam mana kita melihat aspek-aspek al-Islam, okay? Selain daripada syahadah, kita lihat aspek ibadat dia. Ibadat ada ibadat, there are obligatory ibadah, there are al-ibadah al-masnunah ataupun yang tidak wajib. Kemudian pergi kepada perkara berkaitan dengan akidah, kepercayaan dan sebagainya. Dan kita masukkan juga perkara berkaitan dengan akhlak, tasawuf dan seumpamanya. All those will be combined and we put certain items dalam kumpulan-kumpulan tertentu. Ada respon yang tertentu dan seterusnya daripada respon itu kita anggap dia sebagai composite indicator yang menunjukkan tahap religiosity seseorang. Okay. Conceptualization will get you to one specific meaning agreed upon collectively to a concept for the purpose of the research. And the process of specifying the real meaning of what we want to research or want to study will involve the penjelasan terhadap indicator, the description of the indicators that will be used or that are going to be used in order to measure the concept and the different aspects for the concept, what will mean, what we term as dimension. And that will lead us to dua perkara ataupun there are two terms here, indicators and dimensions. Indikator dan dimensi adalah dua istilah yang digunakan dalam biasa digunakan. Indicators are the results of process of conceptualization, and the dimension are the gabungan beberapa indikator dengan ciri-ciri yang sama. The collective indicators or indicators with same attributes will be put into one or certain groups which we term as dimensions. Dimension akan membentuk konsep. So if we put it in a diagram, it will be stated in this way. This is a very simplified diagram. Okay, dimensi dibentuk oleh indikator, ataupun dimensi ini akan dibentuk oleh indikator, dan dimensi ini akan membentuk konsep yang berkenaan. Walaupun kita tak akan cover secara detail di sini, kalau pergi pada structure equation modeling, SEM, kita akan jumpa formative versus reflective. Yang ini biasanya formative, membentuk konsep, dan ini adalah reflektif, dimensi itu being terzahir dengan indikator-indikator yang ada, being manifested by the indicators over here. So for example, kita ada Islam, the Syariah part, indikator dia adalah one, contohnya melaksanakan solat fardu, melaksanakan solat sunat, melaksanakan puasa Ramadan, melaksanakan puasa sunat, bersedekah, kemudian bayar zakat dan sebagainya. All those will be the indicators for the Syariah part of the religiosity. The Aqidah part may be represented by, saya percaya bahawa I believe that Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala is the only God, or the only Rabb that should be yang layak untuk disembah. Satu, mungkin straightforward, tapi kita boleh pergi dengan bentuk yang lebih, kita kata dalam bentuk yang tidak langsung. Contohnya, saya percaya Allah SWT memberikan rezeki pada sesiapa yang dikehendaki. Saya percaya bahawa apa yang saya perolehi sekarang ini adalah hasil daripada titik peluh saya sendiri. That's one of example. Itu adalah negatif. Dan respon kita di sebelah tu, it's either, for example, we can use Likert scale, totally agree to totally disagree, sangat tidak setuju kepada sangat tidak setuju, daripada sangat setuju kepada sangat tidak setuju, ataupun sangat betul kepada sangat tidak betul, ataupun apa sahaja. That will be discussed later. Okay. Kemudian aspek contohnya akhlak ataupun tasawuf, ini berkenaan dengan saya akan buat ini kepada keluarga saya, saya tidak suka untuk buat sekian-sekian kepada jiran saya, dan sebagainya. All those will be stated as indicators, and those indicators are the reflective ataupun kita kata manifestation of the dimensions, whereas all these dimensions will be combined in order to form the concept of religiosity over here. That's how, in a very simplified way, to understand the conceptualization process of a theory. Satu teori itu kita conceptualize dalam bentuk yang semacam ini, konsep religiosity itu sendiri. And in our study, the one that I mentioned, being done nearly 20 years back, 2007, 2008 kalau tak silap, bukan sekadar melihat religiosity. Religiosity is only one part of the study, but we want to look at whether religiosity has certain effect or impact on the decision of an individual to select or to choose between Islamic banking or conventional banking. Nak pilih conventional banking atau Islamic banking ni, religiosity itu ada peranan tak? Okay, so that will be another variable, the selection of the bank. Kenapa dan sebagainya, ada sebab-sebab lain that will form another or other variables. Okay, itu adalah contoh bagaimana diaplikasikan. Okay, the levels or steps in doing research. One, we start with the operational stage. Concepts will be used as the base for the measurement. Each variable or each conceptual variable will be stated in as indicators, and also mention how it will be measured. In doing that, we will have to consider a number of aspects. One, if julat, apa yang kita sebut sini sebagai julat variasi, the range of variation. Dimensions or related dimensions, penentuan pemoleh ubah dan attribute, the determination of variables and attributes, and tahap pengukuran or the measurement level of the indicators or the variables itself. Okay, I'll go to each one. For example, in julat variasi, the the range between or the variation level, it will or it should be taken into consideration when we operationalize a concept. For example, we have a maximum minimum border. Okay. One good example is tingkat pendapatan or the apa kita kata income level of the respondents. Usually we will, if I can use my support here, just put notes. We usually ask monthly income. Okay, kita akan letak, for example, one less than RM 1,000, arbitrarily 1,000, RM 1,001 to maybe 3,000. Okay, RM 3,001 to 5,000. Okay, RM 5,001 to 7,000, for example, ataupun 7,500. Okay, RM 7,001 to RM 10,000. Okay. Lepas tu kita buat more than RM 10,000. Okay. Mungkin kita buat dalam bentuk macam tu. Maybe we put it like that. But it looks simple, but actually in doing that, you should consider your respondents, your locality in which or to which you will distribute your questionnaire, and maybe other factors. For example, if you are going to ask or you put your questionnaire in certain areas where the income level or general income level is more than 10,000 or 15,000 or 20,000, then you will be losing a number or a significant details from the respondents if you make it this way. Kalau kita buat dalam bentuk macam ni, kita akan kehilangan banyak maklumat. For example, dalam contoh data ni, block 1. Dia adalah 303,000. This is monthly income, bukan yearly income. 303,000. Walaupun tak ramai, tapi adalah. Okay. The minimum is 365. Tengok gap dia terlalu besar. And to in order for you to have this, it's either you can simply assume ataupun kita boleh dapatkan from the Department of Statistics lah. Kalau kita nak assume, for example, kalau ada seorang pelajar, one of students, not my students, I think students from other department, but came to have a discussion with me a number of years back, and that student said, ingat lelaki perempuan, asal lelaki kot. He wants to get or to distribute his questionnaire in bangsa, and soalan dia ataupun saya tak ingat dia buat sampai 10,000 atau buat setakat 5,000. I asked that student, anda tahu tak orang bangsa tu gaji dia berapa, pendapatan bulanan dia berapa? If you put it in this way, you will lose a significant amount of respondents. Mungkin yang jawab ni, kalau daripada 100 orang, maybe the answer to this maybe more than 30. Jadi 30 kita tak tahu, 10,000 tu 10,000 yang dekat dengan 10,000. Okay, the more than 10,000, is it 10,001, 10,005, 15,000, 20,000, 100,000, or even 300,000? We are not sure. So, because why is it important? It is, for example, if you are looking at the in certain areas, example, kalau di Kuala Lumpur ni kita buat kajian tentang masyarakat di TTDI. the mentality, the way of life, the educational level, the income level of those community will be quite different. Bukan nak mengecilkan di mana-mana, mungkin di tempat-tempat yang lain, di kawasan X contohnya. Okay, jadi cara berfikir mereka akan berbeza yang akan menyebabkan that will to certain extent give effect to the findings of or the responses of whatever questions or items that we are listing after the demographic section tu. Jadi perlu berhati-hati walaupun nampak macam kecil, but it has certain important impact on your findings. Okay, itu antara contoh yang paling jelas lah, sempadan minimum maksimum. Okay, variasi antara ekstrem yang wujud contohnya in terms of tahap ketepatan or the accuracy or in certain ada istilah lain kita panggil granularity ataupun tahap kebutiran data tersebut. For example, umur. We can state if you want to ask age, okay, for example, you want to ask age, you can put age less than 18 years, okay, kemudian 18 hingga 25 tahun, 26 hingga 30 tahun, okay, 31 hingga 35, 36 hingga 40 and so on and so forth. Kemudian kita masukkan kat bawah tu. Tapi kalau katakan kita masuk lebih sampai 40 and then more than 40 years, okay, you will lose those who are mungkin dalam kajian kita, kalau memang kajian tu setakat 40 then okay. Tapi kalau kajian, if your study will deal or you are anticipating or expecting different answers or different responses from those who are 40 to 50 and a different set of responses from 50 to 60, more than 60, then you should put that in your options. A more or a safer way to do that, a more accurate way is just put song. Okay? Just put over there. A more vague approach is age, example 1, teenagers or child, teenagers. Okay, 2, adults or adolescents. Adults. Kemudian yang keempat, pensioners. Ini adalah, kalau kita lihat banding di antara tiga ni, if you compare between these three approach, this one is more, the last one is more the most accurate. This is less accurate but better than the first one. Okay, jadi kita perlu, we have to decide on whatever responses that will be put in the questionnaire as sesuatu yang sangat-sangat penting lah. And as a guidance or rule of thumb, the more accurate you can go, the better it will be. Because if you put age and just a blank there that will be filled up by the respondents, you can manipulate this to have this type or to have this level of accuracy. Okay? But if you have this one, you can't go to this and far from this one. Okay? Jadi kalau kita nak tanya dalam bentuk yang seboleh-bolehnya, sedetail yang mungkin. But the trade-off is semakin detail mungkin, the more detail that you want, the less, to certain extent or in certain cases, the less semakin kurang mungkin the tendency of answering that question. Kalau zaman dulu lah, maybe this time around or in this 10-20 years, it is not an issue. But before that, kalau yang umur 40-an, 50-an, mungkin kita akan faham. Previously, if you want to ask question, tanya orang, dia kata umur tu rahsia, saya tak nak bagi tahu untuk apa sahaja tujuan. So with that situation, you will or you may have to go to this, ataupun mungkin paling-paling yang ini, because we want to at least have a response from that specific respondent or informant. Another example is status perkahwinan, marriage status. We can put berkahwin, tidak berkahwin, married or not married. You can also put berkahwin, bujang, duda, janda, balu. Ya, sebab berkahwin memang dia sedang berkahwin dalam perkahwinan. Bujang yang tak pernah berkahwin, never married. Duda, janda, widower or widow. Balu adalah kematian suami, bahasa Inggeris apa dia tahu. Okay. So it will be highly dependent on the objective of the research and also the reality that you anticipate or expect from the respondents. Okay, dimensi berkenaan. Tadi kita bercakap pasal dimensi. In questionnaires, we tend to put everything in our questionnaire. Tapi tak semua soalan itu relevan. Not all the questions are relevant, number one. Number two, if it is or if they are relevant, even if they are relevant, we have to take into consideration the length of the questions and the time that will be taken by the respondents in answering that question. Kalau soalan itu terlalu panjang, kalau pendek orang suka, but we will not be having enough information that we need. But if it is too long, we as the researcher will be more than happy. But the other side, the one who will answer the question will have difficulties in completing the questionnaire. Mungkin sampai sekerat jalan tak nak jawab lah, susah. Ini dia kata lebih susah daripada jawab soalan exam lagi. So that one or that consideration should be taken into our mind when we are preparing questionnaires. Perlu hadkan kepada dimensi berkenaan sahaja, contoh pandangan masyarakat terhadap gejala rasuah, adakah masyarakat merasakan terdapat rasuah dalam badan kerajaan, setakat mana gejala rasuah wujud pada pandangan mereka, apa pandangan mereka terhadap rasuah sebagai masalah sosial, pandangan mereka tentang puncanya. Kalau if you were to ask, memanglah bagus, it's better if you can ask everything, or if you put all these questions in your questionnaire. But if it is too lengthy, then you may find it, some people may find it difficult to answer, especially when it comes to open-ended question yang kena type, kena isi dan kena berikan pandangan. If you put it in a more, kita kata, easier way to respond, for example, you put Likert scale or you just put scale over there, then it may have a higher rate of response. Ada satu contoh, saya tak pasti saya boleh cari jumpa ke tidak. Oh, tak ada kat sini. Okay. Satu kajian yang saya buat ataupun saya join sekali, ni kajian ni led by Dr. Ali Hanafiah daripada Jabatan Quran. Kajian dia berkenaan dengan pembentukan indeks Rabbani. Ya, pembentukan indeks Rabbani daripada asalnya daripada kajian ataupun tesis PhD beliau, kemudian dikembangkan, expanded to indeks Rabbani yang cuba diaplikasikan ataupun diukur dalam kalangan warga MAIS. In the first place, when we come to forming the index, we have more than 120 items. More than 120 items. Dalam tu ditanya macam-macam. I said to Dr. Ali, kalau soalan macam ni, if this is or these are the kind of question that we want to pose to respondents, believe me, you may have answers or you may have responses, but the responses might be or may be very low unless it is being imposed ataupun diwajibkan kepada pekerja ataupun staf-staf MAIS. Itu pun jawapan tu boleh jadi betul atau tak betul sebab dia akan jawab sambil lewa sebab terlalu banyak, because there are too many questions to be answered. So we cut You cut, and then if I'm not mistaken, the final version of that question was consists of around 75 items. Ya, lebih kurang 70 ke 75 gitulah, daripada 120 lebih yang asal. So that's that is kind of a challenge that we may face in order to prepare a questionnaire when it comes to research. Tak kira lah sama ada research untuk PhD ataupun research yang sebenarnya ataupun yang nak dijadikan sebagai polisi selepas daripada itu. Okay, about variable and attributes. Dah 10 sepatutnya kita masuk dalam topik yang kedua ni. Pemboleh ubah dan attribute. I'll try to cut short. Pemboleh ubah dan attribute. Istilah attribute is the trait or the characteristics of something. For example, if we have a variable, for example, age. Age is a variable. Okay? These are the attributes. Age are variable, these are the attributes. Monthly income is a variable, these are the attributes. And age here is a variable, and this is the attribute. Attribute is the response to the variable. Okay. Mana ada tadi? Okay. Pemboleh ubah or variables are a set of attributes. For example, jantina, gender, peringkat, level, pekerjaan, jobs, works, tasks, so on and so forth. Jenis pemboleh ubah, the types of variable can be dependent or independent variable. We put as DV here and IV over here. Okay. Apa makna bersandar dan tak bersandar? Pemboleh ubah bersandar, dependent variables are the variables that whose value or which value are dependent or contingent upon other variables. Yang nilai dia bergantung kepada pemboleh ubah yang lain. And pemboleh ubah bebas ataupun tak bersandar or independent variables are variables that will determine or will be referred to when it comes to other dependent variable. Dependent variable will depend on the independent variable. For example, if we put it in such a way that, for example, katakanlah religiosity. Religiosity is a variable. Okay. Selection of Islamic bank is another variable. Which one will determine which? Which will determine which? Logiknya kita kata bukan variable of bank will determine religiosity, but the other way around. So religiosity is termed as independent variable, and this one is dependent variable. Selection of Islamic bank. If we dalam kajian yang lain, in other study, for example, if we say that the demographic factor, okay, demographics, this usually be independent variable, and for example, acceptance towards something will be dependent variable. Itu contoh bagaimana dependence and independence variable, and it will vary throughout or depending on studies, depending on research, depending on the nature of data, and so on and so forth. Okay, one important aspects of a variable, the attribute must be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. Indirectly, we have mentioned or we have done that here. For example, exhaustive means less than bawah daripada 1000, less than 100, 1000 we cover, more than 10,000 we also cover. Except here, the problem is it should be more 10,000 to 15,000, 15,1 to 20,000, 20,001 and above. That should be better as opposed to this one. But at least we have covered everything. Kalau pendapatan dia, if the income is 500, it will be number 1. If the income is 15,000, it will be number 6. Okay, so it must be, that is exhaustive. Mutually exclusive, you look at the 5,001, 3,001, and so on and so forth. In certain cases or in certain questionnaire, I found that, okay, they put less than 1,000 and then as number 1 or A, B 1,000 to 2,000 or 3,000, C 3,000 to 5,000, and so on and so forth. So if, for example, just for technical or for the sake of argument, if that one respondent, the income for that respondent is 3,000, should he or she mark B or mark C? Okay, that's an example of non-mutually exclusive. Okay, the exhaustive part is yang kita cover sebelum dan selepas. Gunakan lain-lain sebagai penyelamat. This phrase is, for example, if you have a Google form ataupun Microsoft form, kan dia kata others yang kita boleh nyatakan. You can type things over that. Okay, itu adalah contoh bagaimana to achieve the exhaustiveness of the variable itself, or of the attributes of the variables. Okay. One example here is the abstract concept is kemahiran berfikir secara kreatif, the ability to of creative thinking or to think creatively. The theoretical part is the definition or the theoretical aspects of kemahiran berfikir or the creative thinking itu sendiri. Konsep dia adalah kemahiran berfikir kreatif adalah apa dia, definisinya, apa ciri-cirinya, all the details of the creative thinking. And the operational, how do you measure those mentioned in number 2, the conceptual? How do you measure? How do you operationalize that? Okay. For example, here we put kelancaran, keaslian, sorry, this is in Malay, penghuraian dan kemahiran berfikir secara kreatif. All this usually being discussed in the theoretical parts of the writings. Dalam bab 2 biasanya dibincangkan. Dan kita akan melihat kepada literature, we will refer to literatures, we will refer to experts in defining that, and we will use that definition in our questionnaire, or we will translate that definition in the items of our questionnaire. Itu apa yang kita maksudkan di sini. Okay, yang lain tu rasanya just panduan, just some guidelines on preparing questionnaires. Satu, dia kata no hard and fast rules, only guidelines. Yes, actually there are no true and right and wrong. Adalah satu dua panduan tapi not totally right, not totally wrong. Cuma ada guidelines atau tips that can be used in order for us to get the right answer or the answer that we are expecting from the respondents. For example, good questionnaire design will have these characteristics. One, sesuai dengan kesediaan responden. It is suitable or it is appropriate for the respondents, him or herself. If our respondents are, for example, those who are not quite well versed with technology, then our questionnaire should be tailored towards that. Jangan bagi Google Form. Boleh Google Form, but it must be it must be assisted by someone to fill up the questionnaire. Okay, sebab dalam contoh yang tertentu ada for example ada satu institusi di bawah Kerajaan Negeri Selangor, Yayasan Hijrah nama dia. they use apps in order institusi tersebut, Yayasan Hijrah Selangor, fungsi dia adalah untuk memberikan pembiayaan. The main role of Yayasan Hijrah is to extend financing to PMKS or SMEs, okay? Dan termasuk dalam small tu yang nano, pico, yang memerlukan modal. Those who needs money in order for them to establish their business or expand their business, then they can ask Yayasan Hijrah Selangor. They use apps, tapi apps tu their objective or their target audience not necessarily being well versed with all the technologies. Mungkin ada telefon, bahkan dalam suasana keadaan tak ada telefon pun. So in that case, the pegawai ataupun apa kita kata pembantu daripada pihak yang berkenaan Yayasan Hijrah Selangor tu datang bantu dan tolong isikan. Okay, sebab ada soal selidik yang perlu diisi sebelum daripada there are a number of questions that must be respond to in order for them, or just to gauge the tendency, the suitability of the respondents to receive the aids ataupun bantuan tadi. Second, format instrumen yang sistematik. Yang ni mungkin tak ada isu sekarang ni. Biasanya kita akan gunakan in our modern days, we will usually use the electronic form. Rasanya dah, wallahu alam, saya pun tak pasti, tapi rasanya tak ada dah dalam bentuk yang pen and paper, the traditional way of answering questionnaires. Semua dalam bentuk yang modern. Google Form boleh dibawa ke sana kemari, jawab dalam telefon boleh, itu yang paling penting lah. Mungkin jawab dalam komputer pun boleh, dalam tab pun boleh. If you go to just a quick example, if you go to Google Forms, example here, kalau kita buat Google Form, ada contoh tak yang sesuai? Saya tak pasti soalan ni yang mana ni. Okay, jadi just quick example lah dalam bentuk yang macam ni. Kalau Google Form, once the answer being obtained, kita boleh dapatkan respon tu terus di sini, dan kita boleh view in sheets yang kita boleh transfer ke sama ada nak analyze kat sini pun boleh, transfer ke Excel pun boleh, transfer ke SPSS pun boleh. We are not going to do that in details dalam bentuk yang terlalu praktikal sekali ni, just nak tunjuk apa yang boleh dilakukan sahaja. Jadi itu apa yang berlaku. Kalau kita buat contoh ataupun soalan tu, kalau Google Form dia tak tunjuk. Kalau kita pergi kepada preview, yes, we can preview this, tapi dia tunjuk dalam ni lah. Fokus dia ataupun Google Form, sebab dia datang dulu, dia buat tu untuk apa ni, targetnya orang pakai laptop ataupun pakai komputer. But if you compare this with Microsoft Form, a little bit about tools lah. Kalau Microsoft Form, okay, ambil yang ni lah, simple form. Okay, ni saya tanya pelajar saya, then when it comes to preview, dia boleh preview dalam komputer, boleh preview dalam mobile. Okay, dan dia boleh tunjuk preview dalam rupa dalam mobile macam mana. Nampak macam kecil, but it is important. For example here, if we go to soalan yang semacam ni, mungkin tak nampak sangat, ni kena jawab. Certain questions, kita nampak sini macam cantik, nampak sini macam okey, tapi bila pergi kepada telefon, when it comes to outputs or views from the phones, the view is quite different. Some in certain cases, the responses will not be visible at first. Okay? Kena scroll ke kanan atau ke kiri in order for us to get the full list of responses, terutama kalau kita buat soalan yang begini sifat dia ataupun yang berbentuk matrix. Okay? Yang berbentuk matrix tu lagi lah. Itu lagi kadang-kadang, example, if you put questions multiple choice dalam bentuk multiple choice grid, row 1, row 2 dan seterusnya, and the columns is added over here, then when it comes to preview, nampak sini macam kemas lah, preview macam ni. But when it comes to phones, you will probably see these first 3 columns only. The 4th and 5th column will not be visible unless you scroll to the right. Jadi itu mungkin akan to certain extent akan menyusahkan ataupun menyebabkan responden agak sukar. Ada yang tak perasan pun, jadi dia jawab, ingatkan 1, 2, 3 ya, rupanya ada lagi sebelah kanan. Okay, that should be considered juga lah. Okay, tapi kalau dalam Microsoft Form, dia akan buat adjustment. Itu antara kelebihan Microsoft Form. Bukan nak promote Microsoft Form, tidak. Tapi you should, if you want to do or you want to get your questions prepared in digital format, you should consider putting those questions or trying those questions at least in both environment. Satu dalam Microsoft, satu dalam Google Form. Kalau ada yang boleh akses kepada Monkey Survey tapi yang tu berbayar, you can do that. Okay? Sebab Monkey Survey ada feature yang lebih canggih lagi lah. Mungkin tak ada dalam Microsoft atau Google Form. Okay? Arahan yang jelas, we usually put, for example here, yang ni tak ada arahan ataupun tidak jelas sangat. Kalau kita lihat dalam contoh yang lain, kalau saya boleh kongsikan, okay, yang ni yang saya sebutkan tadi, soalannya banyak sebenarnya. Jadi dalam ni disebutkan ataupun dia letakkan mukadimah dia. Okay, this is an example of what has been done by Dr. Ali and the team in order to, for example, dalam bahagian pertama mengukur tentang religiosity, tahap amalan perkara berikut, solat fardu, puasa sunat, bayar zakat, baca Quran, bersedekah. Asalnya nak buat sini, originally we want to put I'm not sure, but more than 20 items over here, but I think this is overkill. This will not be good for the respondents, for the informants. So we cut short, select 5 or 6. Yang ke-6 tu adalah berkenaan dengan haji. Okay? Ini cara antara kaedah untuk mengukur lah. For example, kalau kita nak ukur tentang amalan solat dan sebagainya, we have the responses, sentiasa buat, kadang-kadang, sangat jarang, tidak pernah. Ni kalau skala tu 4 poin. Kalau 5 poin mungkin kita ada 1 poin di tengah ni. Why we put 4? Because we want to standardize it with sangat setuju, tidak setuju dan sangat tidak setuju. Kalau dalam Likert scale, original Likert scale is 5, but my personal experience, when we put 5 from totally agree to totally disagree, a number of respondents will want to be in the middle. So they will answer neither agree nor disagree for the first one, second one, third one, fifth question, and so on and so forth. Akhir sekali kita dapat semua dia jawab, tak pasti ataupun yang tengah-tengah itulah jadi ashab Araf. And from that point onwards, ini dah tahun 2008 lagi, I usually kecuali terpaksa ataupun kecuali sebab-sebab tertentu, I usually omit the middle respond atau the middle item. So we have either positive or negative and no the neutral point tu. So sebab ini 4, maka yang atas ni pun dibuat jadi 4. Haji kita tak boleh nak kata sentiasa buat, we can't use this response. Tidak pernah buat haji, sangat jarang buat haji, orang tak buat haji tiap-tiap hari. So we have another approach for ibadat haji. For example, telah menunaikan haji atau telah mendaftar menunaikan haji, nak pergi tak boleh tapi dah daftar, sedang berusaha mendaftar, telah buka akaun tabung haji tapi belum daftar, ataupun belum ada akaun di tabung haji. Macam yang ni, macam level dia macam tak, just like and this one is just like one. So yang saya sebutkan tadi, tidak ada yang lebih baik sedikit, ada kelemahan tu, and that will be based on whatever literature yang kita rujuk. Satu perkara penting, walaupun it is not mentioned in this slide, when it comes to preparation of questionnaire and reporting that, usually in third chapter or fourth chapter, usually in third chapter, because chapter 1 will be preliminaries, or the muqaddimah, literature reviews will be put in section in bab 1 or chapter 1. Chapter 2 will deal in theoretical aspects of the study. Apa contohnya bila kita sebut tahap kewarakan ataupun religiosity tu, apa dia, satu aspek. Kecenderungan untuk memilih bank tu satu aspek, bank Islam tu another aspect. Those will be deliberated in chapter 2, or in certain cases extended to chapter 3 if it is quite length. Jadi dipecahkan kepada 2 bab. The subsequent chapter, for example chapter 3 or chapter 4, will deal with the kita akan laporkan. In that chapter we will report the methods of conducting field study. Okay, bermula daripada populasi, starting from the population, the sample, how the sample is, how the sampling is being done, the sample is being obtained through what methods or through what means, and then about that the sampling. Number 2, the instrument, which is the soal selidik, the questionnaire. The questionnaire is being prepared dalam bentuk yang macam mana. Ada surat daripada ataupun kebenaran daripada pihak UM Ethics ataupun tidak, bila dia dapat. Then about the items into questionnaire, is that, or are those items being prepared by the researcher him or herself, or being prepared by adjusting the existing questionnaires prepared previously by other researchers, or using standard questionnaire or standard banks of questionnaire ataupun sebagainya. All those will be stated and reported duly in chapter 3. Okay. Contohnya soalan sekian-sekian. Question number 4, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or section A is about demographic. Even the demographic question will be listed and stated the responses yang ada, apa respon yang kita sediakan. Tentang contohnya pasal religiosity, soalan nombor 1 tentang benda sekian-sekian. Okay. It is based on kaji selidik yang pernah dilakukan oleh ABC pada tahun 2020. That will be the kind of reporting or reports expected in chapter 3. Walaupun mungkin kalau tuan-tuan lihat benda ni tidaklah terlalu tidak terlalu dilaksanakan, because it's quite relatively new lah to our field, but it's better if you can go along that way, and you will find dalam pelaporan itu kita akan rasa selesa lah, sebab kita base our we are basing our questionnaire not pandai-pandai kita, not based on our individual judgment, but it is formed in the context of theory, based on former research by researcher ABC and so on and so forth. Jadi itu biasanya kita letakkan dalam bab yang ketiga. Surat dan dokumen biasanya disertakan bersama instrumen kajian. Usually we put macam ni tak ada, sepatutnya dia ada dalam setengah kajian lain. Okey, dia ada tulis di hujung ni, boleh hubungi hotline sekian-sekian. Okay, ini adalah hotline MAIS. Kalau kajian yang asal, kita letakkan researcher ataupun nombor supervisor atau email supervisor kat situ. Sini. Okay, yang lain tu ada lagi. Kajian ni. Oh, yang ni dia tak ada. Ni morat moratorium. Ini masa COVID dulu kajian ini disediakan. Even daripada awal lagi, ini contoh satu kajian yang satu format yang bagus lah. Study on moratorium masa COVID, awal-awal lagi disebut persetujuan menyertai soal sidik. Okay. Jadi tik yang ni boleh proceed, kalau ambil yang kedua dia akan end terus. Okay. Antara cara yang boleh digunakan. Okay. Ada soalan ke? Kalau ada soalan boleh tanya terus. Dah sejam lagi lebih kurang. Okay. Number 5 here is pilot study, uji rintis. Pilot study should be conducted prior to the real distribution of the questionnaire, and dalam ni disebut, I mentioned 30 respondents, but not necessarily 30. In some cases, 10 is enough. But before pilot study, one thing I forgot to put here is the validation of the questionnaire itself. It must be validated and referred to pakar ataupun orang yang boleh membantu untuk membetulkan sekiranya ada kesilapan. Someone with expertise in